My name is Karen Gillenwater. I'm the curator here at the Carnegie Center, and we're happy to have you all with us this morning, and happy to have our jurors for this year's Format Function exhibition here to talk with you all a bit. I think this will be a very nice conversation, and I know they'd love to hear your all's input and your interest in the pieces you'd like to talk about. So please share those. Don't be shy. We invite conversation. So I just want to introduce our jurors to you and welcome them. We appreciate all of them making the trek from Louisville to Bloomington and Memphis to be here with us this weekend. So first we have Kate Lenkowsky, who is on the far right. Kate is from Bloomington, Indiana. She is an art quilter. She's been making quilts since the mid-90s, and she's also the author of a book called Contemporary Quilt Art, An Introduction and Guide that was published in 2008, and it's a wonderful book. If you haven't seen it, we actually have a copy, I believe, at the desk. It might have gotten moved during the opening last night, but I'll find it so anyone who wants to look through it is welcome to. So welcome to Kate. And then we have Marti, who is a Louisville-based artist and a member of the River City Fiber Artist group that helped start this exhibition 9 years ago. And we're very happy that Marti is one of our jurors for this year. Marti has been making art quilts for over 20 years and has participated in many worldwide juried exhibitions, and she's currently one of the exhibiting artists in Quilt National 2011. So welcome to Marti.
You come on in. You don't have to
You
stand out there.
don't worry about walking in front of the camera. That's fine.
Come on in. Be a part of it. So you can even sit down or drag another chair.
You're welcome to. Yeah. And then our third juror for this year, we are thrilled to have Jennifer Sargent here, who came up all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. Jennifer is a professor at the Memphis College of Art, and let's see, to get the right place. She's been exhibited nationally. She's published in the Fiber Arts Design Book 7. She is a tapestry artist, and we loved having her perspective on the exhibition and the pieces for this year. She also has been awarded an individual artist fellowship from the Tennessee Art Commission in the past. So welcome to Jennifer. Thank you. So I'm going to turn this over to the jurors. They're just going to tour around. But like I said at the beginning, they definitely want to hear your input and your interest in the things you'd like to hear about. So please speak up, and I'll let you all start off. I'll scoot out the way.
Well, one of my favorite things to ask whenever I go into a museum is I ask my people that I'm with, this museum will give you one thing to take home. What will you choose? And then when you have to answer at the end of looking, it's amazing how different your viewpoint is. When you choose your personal favorite versus no matter what anybody else says, you really remember the show and what you saw. And the other thing that happens when you're with your fellow family members or something else, they choose things you would never imagine. It's like, oh, I learned something about them too, as well as the show. So, do any of you in this room have a favorite at this point? Yes, Fran. No, this room. This room. You're always in this room. The great big one. Straight ahead. And why is that drawn to you?
The colors, the balance. Which one did she pick? I don't know. Okay.
That's okay. So what you're talking about is the form of composition of the work. The way the lines come together, the colors, the total composition, how well it's balanced. The forms that are within it, the shapes, the contrasts, the lines, the contrasts, color, contrast, shape.
Pardon me? And I do tend to be drawn to high contrast.
Yes, yes.
But in that particular piece, she really balanced the darks against a big expanse of light. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Yes, Ken.
I want to know, did all three of you choose that one in the beginning? I mean, did all of you, the first time around, did all three of you go for that one?
You know, I have no idea. I can't remember that far
I'm
back.
British. I know it was one of my first choices. You're talking about
This
Yeah.
is
Uh-huh.
one. Yeah.
Because when I saw that in the photograph online, or online, I wasn't that impressed. I'm more impressed now.
Mhm, mhm. Well, that's one of the things when you, as a juror, you are limited by what you see on your monitor.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be when you see it in reality.
Well, it evidently made first cut. I just wondered if all three of you said, oh, yeah, we love that one.
I can't remember.
It seems like there were, out of the 24 pieces that are picked in the end, it seems to me like there were maybe 6 or 8 that all three of you selected on the first go
and
around.
that we wanted in the show.
Yeah,
as
I think
deficits.
so. And then it was a long
And then we
conversation.
had lots and lots of meetings.
Lots of debating later for later. Yeah, the other pieces, yeah.
Well, one of the things that's attractive, that really does attract you, is it has to do with the physical qualities of this work. The color and the size and the shape and the forms within it all are so well balanced that this is one of the kinds of works that you can just kind of get lost in.
Mhm.
There's so much to examine and look at
Right.
when you're up close, but when you're standing back, it even could be larger, but it's a wonderful size as it is.
It looked extremely busy on my monitor. It doesn't look as busy now. I don't know why.
It's also, to my thinking, it's a wonderful sampler of so many different kinds of surface design, both the pieced and applied surface design. I'll just call it, because there's so many different things used for it.
One of the things that appeals to me is the contrast between, I don't know how many of you quilt, but you know how careful, how time-consuming the process is. And yet you look at this piece and there's this sort of freedom visually to it, so that you don't consider the care with which it's been done. But then the technique also doesn't interrupt your vision. You don't go up and go, oh, yeah, look at that. Everything sets beautifully to speak to the viewer.
There's a lot of wonderful art in this room that all has some merit on its own. Jennifer alluded to something in this piece that you see one thing from far away and then up close it's different. And that's particularly what I noticed in this piece is, you have this overall visual of nature. She happens to be from Florida, and I imagine this is like the Everglades. But how many of you noticed these little, particularly in here, there's some little tiny stitches of zigzag in here that's just another little touch that's, you would never notice from a distance, but up close you would really appreciate it.
I think as jurors, that's something else that we really enjoyed, is the fact that there's something to see from a distance, and then there's something to still absorb you when you get close. I think that's, again, sometimes you can't tell, sometimes we're surprised, because again, looking at it on the monitor, you can't see everything, and then you come here and there are these wonderful surprises, and you just pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, you're happy when they look as good. as well. Is there another piece anybody'd like to look at? Sure.
One of the things that attracted me about this piece has to do with its allusion to other forms of art from other traditions and other media. I'm thinking particularly of Japanese screens. And also, there's not an effort, it's a flat image, and yet, which is what the she's achieved that, but she's achieved it in her own way. She's taken something from another tradition and made it her own. But it's, it's not dimensional work. It's another facet.
Anybody else have a piece that
I'm
is
standing in front of you.
to point out or talk about? Yes.
I like this one, the colors, the dimensions, probably the fabric is pretty, one of the contemporary fabric, or it reminds me of something from way back.
It's a recycled blouse
Yeah.
and shirt. I think that's the reason for the buttons on it already.
That's one that really old and really recent.
We don't have any idea. What do you see when you see that?
Well, at first I thought it was youngsters, then I see them now. So I'm not sure.
I have to say, when I was jurying and saw this on my monitor, I immediately thought of the Bering Sea. These are like icebergs or small islands, uninhabited anymore in the Bering Sea, and it's misty and it's great because I've been there. And I'm thinking that's exactly what she wanted to allude to, that, once upon a time this land was occupied and now it's not. And they left behind something.
And the title alludes to this.
They don't know.
That they melt like mist in the solid land.
If you look closely, it's her use of the fabric and the colours and the overlay of that transparent fabric that really gives this wonderful quality, and the movement, texture, just really lovely.
There's some nice use of hand stitching as well. That's one of the things I think you will notice in this entire show, a wonderful sensibility to whatever it is the artist is trying to choose. And you will see like exquisite machine quilting, and then you will see some hand stitching. Nothing is totally hand quilted, but hand stitching as a way of enhancing either color or texture. And then you also see a great amount of use of some of the traditional materials and then some of the non-traditional materials. Like this person is using what she says archival tissue. Now, how she gets it to adhere to the background, I'm not sure, because it isn't overwhelmingly quilted, but it is there.
Quilting paper can be dangerous.
In the past, when I've seen her work, she's used interfacing.
That's what
But this says archival tissue, so I have to admit I do not know.
The little stripe parts of it look like interfacing, but the big pieces do look like they would.
Yeah.
So they would work with that.
I'm interested in the reaction of the audience to this. Can you tell us what it is that attracts you about this? We had a very interesting discussion, the three of us, when we were. I'm curious about that.
It's wonderful that it's a cross-enlistment. It's another way of looking at triptych. It makes me think of pages from an ancient book that are falling apart or that have been in a fire. But it just, the colors, it's warm colors, cool colors. It's it makes me think of a misty, things going in and out of mist, things seen and not seen. It pulls you closer. Some things are very easy to see. Some things you have to go closer to it to see. Contrast. There is contrast going on again with the warm colors versus the cool colors and the triangle shapes, rectangle shapes, linear drawings.
The title is
changing colors, I think.
So it certainly alludes to colors.
Which, to my mind, is fine, but it allows you as a viewer to see what you want to see in it. Which, of course, is different from what I saw into it.
This woman's reaction just suggests to us how many different ways a wonderful piece of art allows you to interpret. I mean, you can interpret it in so many different ways. It can mean something to you one day, and you walk by the next, and it means something, and there's some other meaning there for you that so some of our discussion had to do with color study, and the traders in the marketplace, many years ago, who used to travel around with their color books, and people would choose the colors of things that they wanted the fabrics in. It also alluded to someone who was talking about ancient columns, and the old quality of this. When you look at the texture, it's almost like really old leather. But Greek columns and Roman columns, and then some. I often even saw the wall of these caves that we found prehistoric drawings in, and yet she's talking about the mist and sort of seeing and not seeing, and it's just wonderful. And she's got little bits of printed fabric in various places that make you look at it entirely different way. What does this mean? I won't put it in.
I like the size of it, basically.
Yeah.
The quilter cut me, I like the color.
Okay.
I was a quilter, so I think it looks.
From the tradition. And that group, I think that was called Why Not? And she is from the Northwest. She hand dyes all of her fabrics. And she has really balanced the lights and the darks, as well as varied the size of the blocks. So, yeah, it's really a nice breadth.
You could call that a color study, but you also could look at that, when you, depending on where you're standing, when you look at that, the illusion of space is quite interesting.
I got up close to him.
Those large ones, where the large blocks stand out, but then they fade, then sometimes they fade. So again, we're talking about dimension and perception. Your perception, sometimes it's very three-dimensional, and other times, what happened to it? Why isn't it standing out anymore?
And it's beautifully crafted. I will say that. Very good.
Because I'm one of the guys that quilt has to be big. It has to fit big.
Well, these are intended for the wall.
I know. Well.
I'll tell you, I had an interview once with a man who was the curator of the American Craft Museum for many years. His name is Paul Smith, and he said to me that in his sense, quilts, when you move from one tradition into another, quilts maintain that need for large size. So the artist always has to consider that with respect to, when you reduce something, you're not just reducing it. You have to consider the whole.
I know what it's going to be used for.
Yes, you have to consider the whole. But the image itself, if you're moving a traditional image into something smaller, you need to consider whether it really is a small image or it's large. We're all the
Sean is one man. And, I think there were some other men in the mix, but I don't know that. curious.
Theoretically, no. But you know that even painters, if they want to grab attention, they do huge paintings. There's something about scale that definitely grabs the attention. If you're prepared to spend time, there's also something about the intimate. But you've got to know, it's just as Kate was saying, you've got to know how do you draw somebody in, so that they're so engaged in that scale and that they'll come close and be rewarded. So, yes, I'd say if you want to make an impression, scale will absolutely do it.
But then if you're making it for yourself and you want to hang it up in your house, how big is your wall? Sometimes that's the size that gets determined.
Conversation versus shadow.
I got some floor to ceiling, wall to wall.
Last evening,
You're the kind of person we love.
last evening I was speaking with a collector, and this is a common problem, a collector of craft, and he said to me that I said, well, have you purchased any quilts yet? Because he's been to Quilt National, which is a preeminent quilt competition. And he said no, but it had to do with space.
But I think what we don't do with quilts, again, if you see collectors' homes that collect prints and paintings, they're not afraid to stack them you never see anybody doing that with quilts. You never see anybody going, ooh, I could really put, I wonder why that is.
Well, with the quilter, I would say you want that to be the focus, and you don't want anybody to be distracted by other layouts.
But when you're collecting, then,
Don't you want to see all your collection?
Well, you rotate.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Because really, they say you shouldn't have it close to the sun and light for
You can only go so much wall space.
Oh,
But remember that collectors have an eye and an aesthetic. And I spoke with one major collector who said to me, and I think this is true for people who mount, Karen probably agree with this. He said that he likes to put pieces next to each other that speak to each other, so that when you're looking at one work, you will, suddenly, and one that's beside it, you'll suddenly realize that there's something about the one that's next to it that makes you see more, maybe in this one, or speak in another way.
That is one thing that Karen did beautifully in the installation of this show. Every piece sort of has its own space, but they all flow.
So are there other quilts in this room that you would like to focus on? Otherwise, we can just pick some ourselves and talk about them a little, whatever you'd like.
Yes, Julia. This one. Oh, the photo transfer one by Charlotte.
All of them, to me, are amazing. For such a small piece, the color just really pops all over the place.
it's a digital print, right? Yeah.
Several digital prints,
It's,
or one chopped up.
these are manipulated images of her own on Photoshop. I was interested in reading a little bit on her website after the work was chosen. We, of course, did not know the names of any of the people who were submitting the work, but some of the drips were actually based on photographs that she took on, like, from, was it a highway, or, these where you're going under an underpass and you can see the dripping of the water coming down. So some of these photographs convert into images. She can convert them into images like these that she uses that allude to a number of things, but certainly the verticality of the trees.
And she's really quite accomplished in her sensibility of using her photographs of nature and manipulating them into Photoshop, printing them, cutting them apart, and putting them together in an aesthetic that is very attractive.
And in a traditional quilt form, as it's a grid and it's blocks.
Colorful is nice.
The color is very interesting. I'm not sure. I wasn't sure initially that it was a color that I would associate with what is she? It has to do with the season right before the winter. But when you walk around nature at that time of year, you see so much color that you didn't, it can be overwhelmed by summer colors. But it's there. It's there.
I thought it was rocks from a distance.
Yeah, they're aspen leaves. That's what they are.
In Colorado.
But I was going to say, it's interesting. This is a digital print. That one is also a digital print. So to sort of see how different artists have worked with, it's another technique that sort of opened up fields, possibilities, I think, for artists. In the way, she's worked the way that she splits up the patterns is to do with the image that she's chosen, whereas here she's playing with the possibility of quilting and the way the pattern moves there. So very different approach to thinking about the print.
You guys just talk.
Pardon?
You guys just talk.
Oh, we should talk more, okay? All right.
Questions?
Well, obviously, this is the best of show, and we agonized yesterday afternoon over what was going to be the best of show. And it was really, really scrutinizing both the composition, the approach, the artist's intent, as well as the craft. And they all had, the visual impact was the first thing that we really looked at. And this one ended up meeting all of the criteria. We couldn't think of anything. Why not? It's a wonderful use of technique and color and the quilting to create texture as well.
I think all of us were surprised by the dimensional quality of it because we really couldn't see that. So we chose it as a very flat sort of piece, as though it had been pieced, and then there was this wonderful surprise when we came here. Again, the reason to go and see things in person, because the reproductions in books are just sort of like to beckon you on, and so always come and see because there are surprises. But again, also it was this idea of how we look at abstract things and we always make up stories. We can't just let it be abstract. We were looking up through the trees, we were looking down at cracks in the ground, and then Kate said somebody came in yesterday who was a nurse and saw all this.
That's what I'm thinking too.
I saw a cell.
Yeah.
So, and that's another wonderful thing about art, when it can talk to you differently than it talks to me. And each person has room to interpret it.
There's a wonderful evidence of the skill of this artist in visualizing and creating this herself. We've got this beautiful use of the technique of resist dyeing through dextrin, which crackles and gives you the crackling effect. But when you of the gray, when you go up and you thinking about crackling, or you're not thinking of, you're looking at an image. The piece underneath, we as the jurors could back. There's a full piece behind that, and it is entirely quilted with these little circular. But,
It wouldn't be possible to get gloves on and look at that. Would it be possible? Or it might be?
We could. Yeah.
maybe
Let me go get a tissue.
I can. Well, if you guys want to continue, I can grab some gloves from
Grab
downstairs,
some
and then
gloves.
if when we're finished, if anyone wants to use the gloves and look at it, we can do that. Yeah.
In fact, actually, we should look at Sean Quinlan's back
Yeah.
as well. He was here last night. This is his piece, and he always does political commentary. But he is currently working on a series of pieces that he wants to exhibit where you see both the front and the back. And he is particularly interested in a collection of what I would call the novelty fabrics. Everything in this piece, as opposed to some of the other work where they're hand-dyed fabrics or surface design fabrics. These are all commercial cottons, available on the market somewhere, somehow.
or found.
Yeah, found in your thrift shop and your Goodwill, and who knows? But it's really quite interesting. So when Karen gets the gloves, we'll look at that too. This piece over here is a kind of an interesting piece in that the artist has worked with painting, I would say, surface design work on cloth and then covered it with silk organza to give it a softer feel. So we have already, I'm pretty sure that's silk organza. I know that's also what she used to finish her edge and give a exquisite binding of that.
So it's painted, it's hand painted.
Probably using dye, I think, did she say it's dye painted? It's probably dyed, and you mix up your dye and you thicken it with sodium alginate. Go at it. It's lots of fun.
She's actually a wonderful, wonderful painter. Impressionist.
Yeah, she says it's just hand painted fabric.
And then her choice has been to completely cover it with these very narrowly spaced stitches. And we had a line straight back and forth. We had an interesting discussion about what that does to the surface of the work and whether it enhances, because it can enhance or it can, your stitching is going to either enhance or detract from total image. So.
And that's always a decision that's tough to make. And you really hate ripping it out if you make the wrong decision.
Well, particularly if you've got organza over it, where the holes are and they're not going to disappear.
Oh, wonderful. So somebody asked about this one. And so so this is a total back, and it's totally stitched, just like what you see. All this bubble quilting is throughout the whole thing. Of course, I'm the wrong person to be doing this, since I'm so short. And then, if we look at the back, so you can see that, and here, so this is a piece that's been attached and to this back, and that's what gives it that dimension.
And each of those is
And
like
each
puzzle
one of those,
pieces.
yeah. And that we never ever saw on the monitor, on your computer monitor.
Does the stitching on the front go all the way to the back? And is that how she's holding the two layers together?
She stitched this.
It's two separate pieces quilted.
And
And
then
then she
stitched.
cut it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are all those little stitches on the back too?
No,
A little leaf?
no.
So on the
So-
top, you have the top
So
layer
maybe
is connected
just
to
this,
both.
the vein, or?
I think this is the stitching that is being held. And it's so much.
But you don't need all that really tight stitching to hold it.
It really interesting to know how they piece them off, whether it was incisions or highlights.
Yeah.
It's really
Right.
Yeah.
And this one
I have their own face on.
is another
It is interesting.
interesting
I
piece
didn't realize she did
in that he is using all his fabrics again to make another statement. You know, I have no idea. He was just here last night saying, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. No, he lives in Pittsburgh, and his day job is a videographer, editor for a Pittsburgh TV station on the news, the local news.
Things like that make it hard for the
It
curator
fixes
to know
it.
which side is the way.
Yeah, that's the one.
I mean, I obviously see this as a statement about immigration,
one we
immigration policy on this, right?
Did he say what he?
No, he doesn't. He really likes you to interpret it himself.
He made an interesting comment last night. I was talking with him. He said, you know, you have a political view and before you finish the quilt.
The world is changing. Even the world is changing.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Well, that's what I thought about the Wall Street one, because obviously it was made before Occupy Wall Street. But to me, it's like Wall Street's crumbling, and this is what.
I would agree with you, and I thought her use of in the Wall Street one, the use of like ancient Greece and from Rome, the columns from Rome. I was like, oh, this woman is putting this together well. Yeah.
About Sean, Kate was talking last night when she looked at this website, that he has a video with him placing different pieces on there, and it happens very fast, but he said that's not in actuality how it works, that he really plans it out.
And every single bit is audience. Given an audience here and tried out here and there and there from a huge stack of images. He was careful to pull from.
And also on this wall, we have two pieces that are very much from the quilt tradition in that they're piece work. With, I am thinking even commercial solid fabrics, which is where you see today, most of the time you see hand dyes, but these are just the commercial flat cottons that you can buy. But I find this one quite interesting, as I was technically an expert, that each one of these is the artist's message. So if you have your smartphone and you want to scan it in, she'll love you. In fact, Karen in this quilt book has the
Printed them all. Maybe you can read some there as well.
Quaint revolution, quotable rumination, quality rubbish, Kabbalah reveal, quietly raucous, quantified righteousness, quantum religion, quick relentlessness, quick response, and quiet riot.
Well, I think this means quick response. And the overall icon means quick response. And she also talks about
Are these not all in there?
it can also mean quilt related as long as a quilt.
Oh, they're all in there. Okay.
But the large quilt is the overall composition.
The first one up here is what you get if you scan the whole. It's diametrically
Oh, okay.
incongruous, contradictory double top. And the title of the piece is double top. So if you scan the entire thing, that's what you get.
Gotcha.
And then each one of the little ones gives you that different keyword Q and R to play off of the quick response code. And then one of them is quick response
interesting one on this wall is this small piece here, because she's said, what do you know about jacquard weaving, where you can actually weave images on these machines. So she takes lots of images, and these images are a series about sort of sides of garbage containers, those great big ones, where they go rusty and you get all these amazing sorts of patterns. And so she's created the pattern in a jacquard weave, which is a sort of damask weave where you've got a warp and a wet predominant area. And so it's white one way, black the other, and then she's put it through the large-scale computer printer, so that all these grays that you see are part of the print on top of the woven image, and then coming back in with her machine embroidery so that you get these little touches of colour. So there's a huge amount of work in there. And again, it's another way of thinking about quilting, because she's also added, some of her own sort of stitching in there to get that extra textured effect.
So this is an artist who's really made her own cloth, weaving it.
Well, she hasn't quite woven. This is Oriole Mill. Anybody loves, is interested, you can go there. You can take a 5-day course and you can make your own fabrics. So, if you know, no, the mill will weave it, but she's designed. It's her own design. Yes. Yeah. If you go there, if you know there's about Photoshop, you basically work from Photoshop into there. You can program that.
One of the interesting things about this piece is the way it is presented. So this piece is cloth, and then she has mounted it on cloth-covered spatulas. So it is stretched and three-dimensional away from the wall, and oftentimes I found in fiber art that gives small pieces like this more of a presence, and you kind of think of them like a painting on the wall.
Well, so when you were judging these, you really just see it on your computer. I mean, do you get a description by the artist of how they produced it?
You are completely reliant on the image and the quality of the image. So if anybody enters competitions, image quality is